Welcome to the Hard Truth Podcast. This is Jeremy Fouts, and as always, we have been guaranteeing you that we are going to give you the truth about what's going on in today's world and the truth about our society that we have as far as the way we consume our foods and the way we choose our foods. And today we have a special guest. AJ and Jessica Richards owns a ranch out in Cody, Wyoming, but they have put together something very special for you to be able to get good grass-fed beef delivered to your home at any time. And
Let's go. What up?
the name of this episode is going to be called Nature Knows Best. And I'm honored to have a good friend, AJ Richards, out of Cody, Wyoming, on with us today. You're going to want to participate in getting grass-fed beef delivered straight to your door from the consumer. Choose the consumer you want to do business with and get to be able to develop a relationship with. And today, we are not only going to talk to you about the way to be able to do that by using the website fromthefarm.org, but we're going to give you some education of why that's so important, of really supporting your local producers, not only to support them, to give them the benefits instead of going to the grocery store, but more importantly, what it's going to do for your health. So, AJ, it's an honor and a privilege to have you on today, coming in all the way from Cody, Wyoming. It's been so neat to be able to see your Instagram page, how you not only are doing a phenomenal thing with the fromthefarm.org, but also homeschooling your three daughters on a ranch, and the way that your family definitely represents, the good farm family that we love to support. So thank you for being on. And, before we get started talking about fromthefarm.org, give us a little bit of background, what you and Jessica's vision was for starting this, and give us some education of why it's so important to really understand what you're putting in your body on a daily basis.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate you having me. Might be a little bit of a nuance, but I think for those that are ranchers, it's important to know that I'm a homesteader. I don't have a ranch yet.
Okay.
We got about 7.5 acres that we're trying to become as self-reliant as possible, and uh, part of that too, though, means if you're prepared and your neighbors are not, then you're not prepared. So it isn't about just doing what we can for ourselves. It's how much can we steward this land to be good neighbors if our neighbors need us. So, my family are 5 generations of ranchers. They homesteaded in 1916 on the Arizona Strip, we call it. It's called that because it's the north side of Arizona, cut off from the rest of the state by the Grand Canyon. So you access that area by going south of Utah. And so they went out there back in 1916. It was some of the last homesteading available in the lower 48. And it was basically the most remote and maybe trash ground left. So that's why it was
Yeah.
available. They said, if you can make it, good luck. So our family went out there, threw some fence posts in the ground, and staked out their existence in the beginning there. So I come from a lot of people may have heard the name. It's the Bundys. That's the
Yeah.
family that homesteaded, and so we tend to like to fight for our rights and our freedoms, and not everybody agrees with how we go about it, but you certainly can't deny that the fight we put up is worth fighting. And so, yeah, I'm grateful to be here. Appreciate having awesome conversations with folks like yourself and being able to educate, the listeners that are looking to become healthier and to really make sure that our food security and our food sovereignty stays available for us in our country.
Yeah, absolutely, AJ. Before we get into learning more about fromthefarm.org, what is a free marketplace, and why is it so important? I want to kind of give the audience a real education as well. I mean, I've been in the agricultural field since I was born. I mean, my dad was mainly a row crop farmer. He did have some cows. I got my first farmer's loan when I was a ninth grader, got $11,000 loan and started buying cows then. And actually, when I retired my first time, had a Red Angus ranch in Colorado. So this is definitely something I'm really looking forward to learning more about. I absolutely probably know more than the audience, so I want to kind of take our time here and
Yeah.
educate them on what's happening with kind of the monopoly of the packing houses and different things, and educating them more than we can, as far as letting them know what's going on. So let's start with that question: what is a free marketplace, and why is it so important for our cattle producers?
Yeah, when I hear that question, the first thing that comes to mind is the difference between food sovereignty and food security.
Yeah.
Food security is the ability to make sure that you can put something in your belly, to keep you full, to keep you satiated. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have the right to choose what that is. And we'll kind of get into that throughout the show. Food sovereignty is your right as a sovereign individual to choose what you're going to eat, right? And right now, this whole climate change, global warming agenda, they're trying to remove our livestock. They're trying to move everything towards either insect protein or lab grown, petri dish grown food. And they could call that food security. But if you're telling me I can't eat anything that is of nature and I can only have these, well, now you're taking away my food sovereignty. And so we're
Right.
really working to fight for our food sovereignty. But at the same time, in 1930, we had 6.5 million small farms and ranches throughout the country. Today, we've got less than 2 million. It's somewhere around 1.8 million. Recent statistics that I've heard is over the last 5 years, we have lost 20,000 ranchers per year over the last 5 years. So the numbers are continuing to trend down. There are some good things that are happening. The homesteading movement is one of the fastest growing movements in the nation. A lot of people are waking up to this whole food supply chain issue. COVID, for all of the negatives it brought, it did bring a really significant heightened state of awareness around our food supply chain. And so a lot of people are making that shift, leaving the city, going out into the rural communities and revitalizing them. And
Right.
so that's a positive thing. People are starting to recognize that. And I see that a lot similar to, during World War II, they, they called on every person to grow a backyard garden. It was called the Victory Gardens. That was the
Right.
whole slogan, right? Because we got to feed the troops. So do what you can to feed yourself so we can support our troops overseas. And so I think that this is our modern sort of shift and movement towards victory gardens into the homesteading space. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, food freedom, food sovereignty is your ability to choose where it comes from or how you want to choose it. You could choose grass fed and finished, or heck, I know more folks that want that grain finished because they like the fat
The
flavor.
marbling. Yeah.
And I get it. The palate has been conditioned over
Right.
decades for that sweeter beef. But then you start looking at the nutrient values and comparisons there, and you know, it, just raw data is that grass fed and finished or regenerative beef is healthier for you. It's heavier. It's got more omega-3s than omega-6s, which during COVID, people that were really subject to be really sick or even pass away, they had lots of inflammation. Well, omega-6 causes inflammation. And our
Right.
diets are primarily uh, inflammatory diets. So a lot of people, I mean, I just listened to this podcast with Tucker Carlson, interviewing a guy named Callie Maines and his sister Casey. Callie was a lobbyist for pharma and saw the light and exited there, and now they're speaking out against it. His sister was a highly celebrated surgeon, and so they just see all this stuff, right? And they were talking about that most people during COVID died because of their diet, and we are over 70% obesity in our country,
Right.
70%. 5 years ago, it was around 50 or just under. And so we're rapidly devolving as a society with our health. And so we've got to get back to the source, start working on the root cause and not the symptoms. This whole world in our country, especially with big pharma, is designed to be profitable off treating the symptom, not the root cause, because there's no value in that for
Yeah.
the big companies that make their money there.
Yeah, I've never been into a doctor's office, AJ, and there's before and after pictures on the wall of a doctor saying I got this person off these pharmaceuticals and now he's fit and now he's healthy. I got this person, he's no more longer a diabetic. Now he's you never see that, man. It's
Yeah.
always here's this pharma, here's this next pharma, here's this next pharma,
Yep.
and I've never been to a doctor also. Nothing against doctors. I know they got a good time and place for them, but I've never went when they said, I know exactly what it is. Usually it's like, well, I really don't know what it is, but I went ahead and wrote you a prescription, and I'm big, I own a nutrition company. That's why I'm so much in to taking care of your health. God give us one body. We need to understand, how to take care and protect this body. And I believe 100% it matters what you put in your body. So explain to the audience, what is regenerative farming and why is it so important? I know you touched on it a little bit, but I want to dive in a little bit deeper here for the audience that don't have an understanding.
Yeah. Great question. So, um, God designed this world and
Right,
designed it with, infinite wisdom. It's God, and
right,
things work naturally without us. And then we came in and we think that our role is to master and capture and overpower nature in our own way. And we start seeing the downfall of that, whether it's nature or, outside of us or nature within us, right? There's some really, really fascinating synergies between soil health and microgut biome health, right? At the microscopic level, when you're not treating and taking care of those parts of our environment, internal or external, we're going to have downstream effects. So, regenerative agriculture is really just kind of taking a step back and saying, how would nature do this if nature was to do it on its own? And because we've done so much development and advancement, and you've got fences, running up and down this whole country, and we've killed off, millions and millions of bison, that they're ruminating animals. And then we also removed the predators that used to keep those animals bunched together and always on the move. We've started to see over decades the degradation of our natural environment because things aren't operating like they did naturally. So regenerative agriculture looks at that from the whole and says, okay, how would this livestock move around around my place, my ranch, if that was done by nature, right? So nature would keep them bunched together because of the predator impact. So now they've got heavy concentration in tight bunches. They eat everything they can because you've got this competitive eating nature. So they're not just picking up the ice cream, so to say. They're
right,
eating their Brussels sprouts and ice cream because if I don't eat it, my neighbor's going to. So they're not being as picky. And then they layer the soil with manure and urine, and even the saliva from their tongues contributes to that microbiology in the soil. And so regenerative agriculture takes those things into consideration and says, okay, we're going to keep our livestock closer together. We're going to play the role of predator. We're going to cull we're going to cull the herd, whether it's an actual cull cow, which means it's done producing for those that don't know, or you're just going to pull some numbers out because they're ready to be sold to market. So we're going to cull the herd to manage that impact, just like wildlife would do with the predators when they'd pull the weaker ones out. But we're going to keep them bunched together and always on the move. So they can't just sit there and eat what they want. They have to eat everything, and then we move them around. That starts this cycle that existed before, which is a consistent sort of layer of inputs into the soil from the rumen of animals.
right.
There's this brilliant gentleman that I've learned a lot from in my beginning of my understanding of regenerative agriculture or holistic management. His name's Alan Savory. He's from South Africa. This gentleman was actually responsible for the largest elephant culling in history because he was a sort of he was like a park ranger. And so he's observing, he's like, man, the elephants are destroying the environment. I love this environment, so we need to reduce them. Well, what followed was desertification because
Right.
he was probably university trained and they only know so much of it. And depending on the influence of the funding for that university, like land grant universities are funded by big chemical corporations. And so they teach, just like in the medical field, they teach what they've been paid to teach, right?
Right.
Most doctors are trained how to, like you were saying, give you an idea of what's going on and then prescribe a prescription.
Right.
but not look at the root cause. It's the same with our environment. So you go to land grant university and they've been paid to teach about this chemical works for these pests and this chemical works for these weeds and so forth. Regenerative agriculture takes all of that out and says, what would nature do here? How would
Right.
this act naturally, right? And if you've got certain forages on your ground that are invasive or maybe not maybe they're natural to that area, but they weren't as prevalent, like sagebrush, right?
Right.
Or juniper trees down where I'm from. Those are invasive species. The wildlife impact used to keep them in check and in their natural place, whether it was hoof impact or whatever. Well, we moved the livestock. Now junipers are taking over and sagebrush is taking over and greasewood and those sort of forages thrive in soil environments that don't have a lot of nutrients. And when you start managing that way, all of a sudden you see the return of native species that are meant to be there. You know, your soil will hold a seed bank that will last for hundreds, if not thousands of years. That seed will stay dormant until its right natural environment, and then they come back. And so I've got a lot of friends that are doing regenerative agriculture, and they're just blown away with the results of what's coming. And it's just managing, again, it's just managing your livestock as nature would if we didn't throw fences up, if we had the herd density that we needed and kept them on that rotation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with that. And, one of the things that really was eye-opening experience for me when I went to Oklahoma State University is understanding, and it was mainly in the row crop industry. What I'm talking about is like we moved into this where it's not about the quality of the food, it's about quantity. It's about how can we produce more? How can we, take this seed and cross it with this seed and do about all more production? And that's what's really sad in our agricultural world is we have moved in a direction where it's all about abundance instead of quality. I know that's what you're wanting to do with fromthefarm.org is connect that consumer with the person that's actually growing this livestock to start that relationship. Share with us a little bit more about fromthefarm.org and then also what made you wanted to create this opportunity, because I mean you and I was visiting the other day, and I know the kind of capital that it takes. Anything to do with software, it's a headache, man. But you have to have software in order for you to join that relationship with the consumer and the producer. So share with us what made you want to create this opportunity. What was you and Jessica's big long-term vision? And share with us a little bit more now about fromthefarm.org.
Yeah. So fromthefarm.org is a website where, well, let me just back up and tell you where it started, and then that'll help
Yeah.
explain it. So, I owned a CrossFit gym, one of the first CrossFit gyms in Mesa, Arizona. Lived down there for a while. I'm from Southern Utah. Life brought me to Phoenix, to Mesa. I ended up opening a CrossFit gym, and did some other fun things while I was down there that ultimately taught me some lessons, and ended up in a bankruptcy that got me back home. And I think that was a blessing because I hated every minute of being in Phoenix. I have some really wonderful friends and family down there that I miss those things, but I'm not a desert person. And so,
Right.
uh, it was a blessing, which was hard to see in the beginning, which is typically how it goes. But that got me back to Southern Utah. And, my uncle told me something a long time ago. If you want to be a millionaire rancher, you better start with 10, because then you lose it all and you got a million, right? And so when he told me
Absolutely.
that, I'm like, crap, if I'm going to be in ranching, I better go become super successful so I can go buy a ranch. It's always been my goal. And, but everything I was trying to do to get into the thing I wanted to do wasn't working. So finally I said, let me just go get into agriculture. It's not working anyway. So I called my cousin and I said, can I sell beef for your ranch direct to consumer? And he said, yes. And in fact, I couldn't do it unless you came in because we're too busy ranching. And
Right.
so I started selling for his ranch towards the end of 2019. And we started building a business. People were getting on monthly subscriptions and it was going well. And then COVID hit. And we called to schedule our next round of processing. And they said, yeah, we can get you in 18 months. And this was around March, just after COVID, in March, April. And I'm like, holy crap, man, how am I going to do this? I got customers waiting for their next order. So we drove all over the state, just squeezing cattle in anywhere we could to be processed for beef. And then that brought a whole bunch of other problems, which was the packaging was different and the labeling was different and the cuts was different. And now I had different customer service issues, And
Right.
so But during that time, I'm driving down the road and the news is talking about empty store shelves and, limitations on the meat you can buy because our supply chain just got destroyed. And I don't think we as Americans really understood how vulnerable we were until that. And
Right.
so I'm driving down down the road and I'm seeing these fat cattle in the fields and I'm like, good heck, it's not that bad. I mean, it's bad, but it's not that bad if you could know who your farmer and rancher is. So what if somebody created a website like Airbnb that showed you on a map everywhere you could buy right from the rancher? Because that was the other thing is, I hated being teased as the city slicker cousin growing up, but
Right.
as an adult, I now realize the blessing in that I can speak both urban and rural, and that was what was missing. Producers are busy ranching, farming. They don't want to be on social media necessarily. It's kind of it's a necessary evil now to go direct, but it's a lot of extra work. And so I thought if somebody could do the work of the marketing to bring those two groups together and then let them do commerce, now we can cut out as many middlemen as possible and make sure the producer gets the lion's share of the dollar. So that idea came, and frankly, it was an idea born of God because I'm too dumb. There's no
Right.
freaking way that I would have thought of this, and I know nothing about software. And so I ignored that for a while, for a few weeks. So I'm like, yeah, somebody should do that, and
Right.
not realizing like, no, God just put this on your heart and you can't run from it. And so honestly, I couldn't sleep for the next 3 weeks because I didn't want to do it. I wasn't the right guy. And,
Right.
reading the Bible, I recognize that God calls a lot of people that aren't the right guy and they find their
Oh
way,
yeah.
the way to that as they're answering that call. And so every night I'd lay down and I was in a pretty bad space, worried about what was happening. And I would picture the face of this man when I was in Iraq. We took care packages to this home, and I've got a picture of me playing soccer with one of his kids. I got my full battle rattle on. I've got my M4 with a 203 on my chest, and I'm trying to play soccer. And that was my favorite day because I'm more, I'm more of a. I'd rather be a gardener, a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. But I'm capable of doing both, but I much more prefer the humanitarian side. So that was probably my favorite day there, being of service in a different way. But now I'm laying my head down at night and I'm seeing this man watch us take care of his family. At least this is how I'm seeing it in my head. And I see me as him. And if we don't do something, I'm going to be that man watching other men feed my family. And I couldn't sleep. And I just was wrestling with that and wrestling with that. And finally I said, okay, God, who do I got to talk to even figure this out? And so I started asking questions, and I met shortly after met a gentleman named Isaac Barlow, who's become my mentor and is a partner in this. And he was already well underway in a software development company of his own. So I go meet with him, and the first time I met with him, he said, "Listen, AJ, there is one industry that if I ever was asked to do it again, I would never do it, and that's tech,
Yeah.
because 1 in 2,000 companies make it." And so he was just telling me what I needed to hear. Like, if you're going to go down this route, it is not going to be easy. And, fortunately, God had me blinded to the challenges, and I just was so driven. I'm like, okay, what do I got to know? And so then from that point on, that was about April or May of 2020, I just started asking questions. And because that's what he said, go do the research. And I said, okay.
Right.
So I started doing the research, and really what that was talking to ranchers, talking to farmers, talking to consumers. What do you guys need? What's missing? Because if I'm going to go down this impossible route of software, I want to at least make sure we step off on the right foot and that it even makes sense. 3.5 years later, I found myself running a USDA slaughterhouse in Cody, Wyoming, that if you would have told me that in 2020, honestly would have scared me off. And I probably wouldn't have had the courage because I know nothing about slaughter. I had, what I knew was what it looked like dropping live beef off on one side and picking up packaged beef on the other side. And I had no idea what happened inside those walls.
Right.
And so now I'm up here in Cody, and I wasn't supposed to run that plant in Cody, but circumstances changed, and you're in a town of 10,000. Good luck finding somebody that knows how to run a slaughterhouse that can pick up and run with it. And so as an entrepreneur, as the guy that's sitting there being responsible for the whole thing, I looked at my wife and I said, I guess we're running this plant for a minute. And so I called all my managers in. I said, I have no idea what's going on here. You guys help me. You need toilet paper, soda, or whatever to fill the fridges. I'll go run those. but any problems that come up, I'm going to lean on you to help me, because you know as well, better than I do, how this functions. And so, and I'll say we did not do, it was a crash course, and we crashed. So anyway, I called my partner, Isaac, after being here for a few months. And I said, Isaac, I am now running a slaughterhouse, a USDA slaughterhouse in Cody, Wyoming. I have done the research. I don't think there's anything else I need to experience to get this going. He goes, what? You're doing what? Where? Because I'd only talked to him 5 months ago, and that's how fast it moved. I mean, I know God's behind this, because I'm watching miracles and doors open and things change at such an incredible things you wouldn't even, like the Chevron law. If people aren't familiar with the Chevron law being struck down, the Chevron law said that if you're a 3-letter agency and the laws are vague, you make them up. So now you're the judge, jury, and executioner, and the USDA, the FDA, the EPA, anywhere that the laws are vague, you guys make up the rules. And that's what kind of took our country in the crap hole, because now these guys are all just making stuff up, and that just got struck down right at the right time. And we know our biggest challenges are going to be lobbyists, because they work for the big money guys to keep laws in their favor. So Absolutely. That happens. And I'm like, holy cow, what a miracle that this would be struck down right when we're getting ready to take off. And then you have recently RFK throw his hat in the ring with Trump. That's another miracle. I mean, I think RFK's policies on farming and regenerative agriculture are better than anybody I've ever seen. But I also think we have a global issue we've got to handle first. And I think maybe Trump might be better for that. But those two parties coming together to make America healthy again, which is the new slogan. What a miracle. What a perfect time for something like that to happen, to even give us more of a runway, that when those battles come, we've got advocates that want to see the sustainment of our existing farms and ranches, and then a path for that to grow. So that's what we did. We put this platform together, and really what I learned in visiting with these farms and ranches, what they lack is a competitive marketplace, a free market. Right now, we live in a world where everything has been designed and trained and taught for them to contribute to the big guys, not for themselves, right? I was talking to a rancher the other day. He's like, man, I got 80 calves that are getting fat, and I'm trying to decide if I take them to auction or hold them and sell them direct. And he made the decision to hold them, having faith that the customer is going to be there ready for him. And I think he made the right call, because I think the challenges that are coming, if you're growing food, you're set up to be in the best position for the next few decades, because we have a shortage. We are at 1948 to 1950 cattle numbers in America. That's how much livestock we have here, with 2024 population. We are wholly dependent on imports to feed our nation. And so I'm not advocating that we just blow up the system we have and make a shift. We couldn't do that. We would see famine for sure. What I'm talking about is taking what has devolved over the last few decades and slowly transitioning in a common sense way, because the other thing is our soils are now dependent on fertilizers. They're dependent on these things. And if I've met people that tried to go regenerative overnight and their soil aggregates collapsed because it's like a junkie, they have to be weaned off of those things. And so it's going to take time. And the education that's going to be necessary for producers to make those switches, and the time it takes about 5 years before you start seeing some of the benefits of changing your practices into regenerative, before you start seeing the soil biology change and your soils become more healthy. It just takes time. So we're talking about a transition over time. And so From the Farm is designed in a way that we cannot be successful unless our farmers and ranchers are successful first. So so what I realized is, like, man, the biggest thing that somebody could have helped me with when I was selling for my cousin was the marketing. If somebody like Airbnb, if you've got an Airbnb, you have one because you didn't have to do the marketing. You just had to have a property that you could list on the site, knowing they're bringing the traffic to rent it out. We're doing the same thing with farms and ranches throughout our country. And so, kind of in a nutshell, that's how we describe what From the Farm is. It's the Airbnb or the of local food, or I've even heard it described as a digital farmers market, where you can
Right.
shop there 24/7 and have it shipped to you anywhere in the nation.
Okay. Yeah, I know we're going to put in the call notes from thefarm.org, but so explain to us. I know you're doing a little bit of it here, but let's say I'm in Prosper, Texas, and I want to order some beef. How would that work? I know we're going to put the call notes in here to let people experience it, but do I have to only pick a Texas market? Can I pick a Wyoming market? Can I pick other markets? How does that actually work, as far as the consumer listening today? How do they go about navigating on your website and picking which one they want to start a relationship with?
Yeah, great question. So when you set up a profile, just you set up a profile on the website that holds all your information, just like if you had an Amazon account, right?
Right.
And you can go on there and you can shop from anybody you choose. That's a free market. Pick who you want. We are going to, in order, the long-term goal is to reduce food miles and
Right.
support local economies, right? So that's the long-term goal, but it's going to take time to bring people on there. And in the meantime, you can order from anywhere you want, and most of these producers will ship to you. And that's a huge help to these guys, because as we're developing, we do need that. But at least you will know the farmer or rancher. Our slogan is "Shake the hand that feeds you."
Right.
So, consumers, if I can put two ribeyes side by side, most people now want to know where they came from, not the ribeyes. Those will both look great, but which one's chemical ridden from a massive feedlot, and which one's been been taken care of with more moderation in those things, and more intention around that. That's what they want to know. They want to talk to the producer, ask the questions that matter to them for their family, because they're waking up to this, and be able to have that personal relationship. I've said, if you know your farmer and rancher, you'll have it. If you don't,
Right.
and you're subject to what's in the grocery store, you're subject to what's going on a much larger scale. It's like a spider web. There's so many things that are touching, and that's what makes us so vulnerable. So yeah, you can buy from anybody you want on there, have it shipped to you, and then over time it makes sense to try to buy as close to home as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Where do you see the growth in the next year or two? Are you continuing to reach out and add new producers in these different markets, I assume?
Yes. Yeah. That's going to be the hardest part for us, is meeting these producers, because they are so busy on their farm. And frankly, I know these folks because it's my family. And if I
Right.
cold call them, they don't know me from Adam. I'm not going to get two words in before they're too busy and don't want to hear the rest, right? Because everybody's been sold a bag of goods by somebody that's here to help before, and it hadn't paid out. So, but when we get introduced to them and I can have a conversation one-on-one, we're at 100% sign up, because they can hear the value of our mission. One of the things that God told me when this idea came was, you also can't sell it. So not
Right.
only do you have to go raise millions of dollars to develop this software, you have to do it in a way that doesn't bring venture capital or somebody that doesn't believe in the mission. Because most investors, I get it. Your job is to invest. Your goal is to invest and get a return as fast as possible. But we cannot risk selling this possible marketplace to big corporations, because they'll shelve it or turn it into what works for them again. And so the hardest part is finding those producers and growing, and having the patience of the people to buy where they can now, so that we can develop this and then add more people as we grow. And so that's our biggest challenge, is finding those producers and letting them know that, like, no, we're genuinely here to do this, and we cannot win until you win. So our platform is designed where we only get a small commission. It's about 10 to 15% on the sell, and only what's sold. And that money goes right back into developing the platform and adding more to the marketing to bring more people, where we will make our profit. And that was the other thing. How can we do this in a way where we're not making money off the backs of the producers?
Right.
And that's another challenge, right? Because that's not currently the system. The system is currently, you're going to get 14 cents on the dollar, and I'm going to get all the rest in the middle as the middleman. We designed it in a way where our revenue will come from complementary items to food, things like salts and seasonings and cutting boards. So we partner with organizations that we have met the founders. We know what their values are. I don't care about the company. I never have. I don't care about the money. I never have. We want to know who are the people behind these products that we can confidently share with the people that trust our platform. and those commissions from those affiliate products is how we have designed this to make profits, so that we're not doing it off the back of the producer. And so
Right.
it is a great experiment, because it's going to take a lot of trust and a lot of faith with the people coming on here, both the consumer and the producer, that we genuinely are here because we've been called to, and our decisions come from that place. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's kind of what where we're at right now.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to support from thefarm.org to my audience, and really encourage them to, link up with the relationship with the producer and get products coming to their door. But would it also help you, if we're listening, the audience, and know other producers, to be able to reach out to you as well, to be added to your system?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you do, my request is that you have talked to them. If you send me a list of people, I'm cold calling, and I get that, no
Daily.
thanks.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
What I need is, hey, we learned about this thing. You should check this guy out. Let them listen and have them contact me. And if they do, then we'll get them on there, and we'll take care of them. We'll do our best, and to get this message out there. So, yeah.
Man, AJ Richards, it's been a pleasure to have you on the Hard Truth podcast today. What is the best way? I know they can go to fromthefarm.org, but what other ways, maybe Instagram or email, that they can contact you to learn more about the program and figure out a way to be able to assist? I mean, I want to watch your program literally blow up. I'm a big believer in, getting the right amount of grass-fed beef into your body, and then also supporting the producer. I mean, that's the longevity of our country, is making sure that these farmers, these ranchers, have success and being able to do what they're born to do, what God's called them to do. But what other ways can we get in touch with you and continue to follow your mission?
Yeah, so I'm a lot more direct on my personal Instagram. Direct meaning I call out some of the big people that need to be called out, and that's _J_Richards. Our company Instagram is From the Farm US on
Okay.
Instagram. Um, we are a lot more active on Instagram than anywhere else. We do have a Facebook page, From the Farm USA, that people can follow us on there. But yeah, if you want to follow us there, we'd love to have you join the journey. We're going to have we're building an email list. If you want to stay caught up on that kind of stuff, we'll send out newsletters, let you know what's going on. One thing I want to mention right now, because I think it's really, really crucial, and it's about this policy called the Sustains Act. The
Okay.
Sustains Act is it's already passed. They passed it in the OCONUS, that last OCONUS bill that was a whole lot of BS.
Yeah.
But what that will allow is for private organizations to give money to the USDA for special programs. So here's the concern with that, right? They bill it like, oh, we're going to be able to bring all this money and encourage these sustainability programs. Well, let me tell you this. JBS is the largest meat distributor in the world. And they got their momentum because they bribed 1,800 federal Brazilian officials, including the president. They were caught, tried, and spent time in jail, but because they've got billions of dollars, it was a slap on the wrist, essentially. They weren't there very long, and they had to pay a very nominal fee. So
Right.
now let's take those guys and say that was under the table. Now we just legalized it. Now you can openly pay us to do special programs. Do you think if the USDA is receiving millions and maybe billions of dollars from a massive corporation like that they're ever going to make a decision that would go against them? That's the
No.
concern, and it's already passed. The NRCS is asking for opinions on how to spend the money, and I'm like, you don't even care, because we told you we didn't want this thing in the first place. So you're just saying that to say it, but you're not going to listen.
Right.
But what I've seen is through social media, the American people can rally and put a ton of pressure on different organizations, and actually, we may not believe it, but cause change. The Oregon dairy farms. If people maybe don't remember, or maybe you have, the big dairy in Oregon lobbied that the single dairy cow owner had to follow the same rules that they did. And what that means is if you had one dairy cow and you have an improved, if you have one dairy cow, you have to build all the infrastructure that the big guy does to be able to have that one dairy cow. So if you have gravel or concrete, you have to put gravel, concrete, all these other things, which the infrastructure would not make it worth it to own your own dairy cow. And
No.
that was lobbied by the big dairy there. And that got out to the public. They rallied and they backed off. And then
Yeah.
the water curtailment in Idaho, same thing. They were shutting the water off for the farmers right when it was time to start watering. They waited till they planted all their seed and they invested, tens of thousands of dollars in their product, got it planted, and then they went and tagged everybody's wells and said, you can't pump. And the internet went nuts. The word got out and they rallied. Right now, you've got the Mod family. The Mod family is a group of ranchers that they were raided by a government agency in full tactical gear, husband and wife, young children, because their fence is on BLM property. And somebody might say, well, it shouldn't have been there. That fence had been there for 75 years.
Yeah.
That was a long-term deal that everybody was aware of. Nobody had a problem with. Now you get some new guy in there with a wild hair, wants a badge on his chest, and raids this family. And they're going to try to prosecute them separately. And if they both get this judgment against them, mom and dad gets taken out of the home, and the kids are left in the care of extended. I mean, it's so corrupt. So we know that social media, for all its downsides, can be used for good to rally people to put pressure where it belongs. And we need to put the pressure on the Sustains Act.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you guys get involved in our social media or you get on our email list, marketing in food, the marketing that we do is education, because we've become so far removed from our food supply chain. We just don't know. We've fallen into this trap of convenience, right? That's nature. Nature follows the path of least resistance, and we are nature. And so, man, it's so convenient. So I'm not going to worry about educating myself because it's right there. I can go to the grocery store and get it. But when it's not there, you're going to wish you had the education. So we are really adamant that we're going to try to bring the real education that isn't paid for by big pharma, big food, big chemical ag, and let people know what's really happening behind the scenes so we can stop the loss of our farms and ranches. It's not just about stopping the loss, because we've lost so many already. If we sustain a broken system, that's not a good thing to sustain. We have to build a path to create a whole new agrarian movement, because we need more. And that's what I love about this homestead movement. With you buy a 40-acre property, you grow what you can for your family, and all that excess can be put on the platform and made available for your neighbors. That's what it looks like to start building a resilient and sustainable food system.
Man, AJ, America better wake up, man. Everything you're talking about just gets me, just kind of, number one, upset inside, thinking, how have we been asleep this long to allow this to happen? But the other side of me, gets excited because there's people like you and Jessica that see this vision and this mission of bringing that relationship back to the producer and the consumer. And America better wake up. I mean, that's the only thing I can say is we better have a better understanding of where our meat comes from, how to support those farmers and ranchers that provide this meat. And my hat is off to you and everything you and Jessica are doing with this mission. And we want to be a part of it here at the Hard Truth Podcast. My request to the audience is go to fromthefarm.org, get you an order, get on the email list, start educating yourself what you can do to bring this country together in the right way again. So thank you, AJ Richards, for being on. Nature knows best. There's no doubt. And we have messed it up a lot, but together, what you said, I totally believe if we come together on social media, we come together with the producers and link up with people like you, we will be in a better place here in America. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate you having me.
All right. AJ Richards from thefarm.org. I encourage all of you to share this episode of the Hard Truth Podcast. Give us a review. Share this with your friends and family members that are lacking that education of knowing the importance of what food goes into their body and how to support our local producers. Thank you for joining us. Good day and God bless.